Joanne O'Flaherty. Our second talk then is entitled Ubuntu Voices, Exploring Possible Futures for Global Citizenship Education. And our speaker is Dr. Joanne O'Flaherty, an Associate Professor in the School of Ed here in UL, and a Research Lead for the Ubuntu Network. She's a primary degree in PE and English, and she's worked in a variety of educational settings, including the formal post-primary sector, the NGO sector, before joining the UL faculty. And her research interests include teacher preparation, social justice education, social and emotional learning, and she's published, and I might add, widely in these areas. So, Joanne, over to yourself.
Thank you, Paul. I'm just going to share my slides. Apologies.
Yeah, we can see those.
Fantastic. So again, thank you to Elaine and the broader EHS faculty for inviting me to contribute to this Knowledge with Impact lecture series. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to tell you a little bit about the Ubuntu Network today. As suggested, the title is Ubuntu Voices. So I am merely here today to tell a story representing a large network of invested stakeholders, teacher educators, NGOs, etc., on exploring possible futures for global citizenship education. The purpose of my input today is to tell the story of the model of the Ubuntu Network, and therefore explore potential possible futures for GCE. So within my brief chat today, I suppose I want to tell you maybe about three things. I want to tell you about our approach to knowledge generation and development and understanding of GCE concepts, social justice, education for sustainable development. I want to speak very briefly about our impact thus far, but then I want to couch that also in some of the challenges and the lessons that we have learned across our activities. So who are we? We are a network of teacher educators funded by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, predominantly. We also seek funding from alternative sources, including European sources, NGOs, Erasmus funding possibilities also, as well as IRC tied to Ireland equally. We have three core staff. As Paul alluded to, I am Joanne, the research lead for the Ubuntu Network. I work very closely with two colleagues, so we're a team of three. Deirdre Hogan is our project coordinator, and Thea Soler is our digital and media and communications officer. So we're a core team of three that work to support this national network that forms a centre for excellence for global citizenship education. We are supported in terms of our governance by an independent management committee. We're comprised, as I suggested at the outset, by assembly members. Assembly members constitute teacher educators and invested stakeholders across the area of global citizenship education. We have associate members that reflect a broad spectrum of policy and curriculum stakeholders, including the Department of Education, Irish Aid, the NCCA, the Teaching Council of Ireland, and then we have a number of other stakeholders, including, for example, other strategic partners that work in the space of both formal and informal education in Ireland to support global citizenship education. I suppose to give an overview of our target audience, at a very basic level, our target audience are 15 higher education institutions that are involved in post-primary teacher education across the island of Ireland. That constitutes some nearly 500 faculty-based teacher educators. But as well as those faculty-based teacher educators, we also target and try and support some 500 school placement tutors that obviously work to support our pre-service teachers whilst they're on their practicum and placement experiences. Across those 15 institutions, there are in any given year between 5,000 and 6,000 pre-service teachers that are engaged in some 44 programs of initial teacher education, both consecutive and concurrent. So I suppose in order to situate the practice and model of the Ubuntu network within the broader international policy landscape, we have plenty to draw from. Largely speaking, we would be informed from an international policy perspective by the work of UNESCO, the work of the OECD, the Council of Europe, and then GEAN also. And these organisations produce many policy documents that shape and inform the work we do here in the island of Ireland with regards to GCE, but then at a more maybe acute level in terms of how we work to support global citizenship education in initial teacher education post-primary. So these are the documents that would provide a roadmap for us from an international perspective. And largely, I suppose, we look to the work of UNESCO, most recently, the Education to 2030 Declaration and Framework for Action, which was launched in Dublin Castle. Not only do we have the international policy landscape, but also a lot of our work and our model and our agenda to generate knowledge and understanding, share practice and impact is largely informed by national policy landscapes. And within these policy landscapes, we're drawing on policies as developed by Irish Aid, for example, the Irish Aid Global Citizenship Education Strategy up to 2025, which is also now under review. We look to the Education Strategy for Sustainability, where we have the second iteration of this coming from the Department of Education. And of course, needless to say, we're hugely informed by the work of the Teaching Council of Ireland and more specifically, the CAME standards for initial teacher education. So not only do we have a very rich, very diverse, very broad policy landscape, both nationally and internationally, we also have a huge seminal and contemporary literature base spanning some 40 or 50 years working in the space of development education, global citizenship education, global education, and education for sustainable development. Like everything in education, we love the use of acronyms, which is something I often maybe lose sight of when I give any inputs or talks on what we are actually doing. There's a lot of different frameworks listed here, but I suppose the key message that to take, I could have used 5 slides and I could have kept going over and over and again in terms of how GCE can and has been conceptualized across the extant literature. But I suppose with relevance to this knowledge and impact lecture series, you can conceptualize GCE in terms of existing theories of education and development. So for example, I have seen GCE conceptualized using Biesta's qualification to subjectification perspectives. I have seen GCE conceptualized from Andrati's seminal work, where she looks to soft GCE compared with critical GCE, for example. Soft GCE is conceptualized as that charity giving perspective, white savior perspective, whereas critical GCE is conceptualized by Andrati and others as much more critical, focusing on root causes of social injustices, and also the key part of the looking inwards in terms of our own positionality, our own beliefs and values, our own assumptions that we bring to any space, educative or otherwise. You see on that slide, Andrati also talks about colonial and decolonial perspectives. Equally, you can conceptualize GCE and ESD from a competency-based approach, which is something I have explored in my own work. And in conceptualizing GCE from a competency-based approach, you see a number of different approaches on that slide. I suppose 2 of the key ones that I've engaged with and is evident across much of the literature is the idea of conceptualizing GCE from the OECD global competences perspective. That's one approach. Another approach that I'm very much drawn to is conceptualizing GCE using a social and emotional learning framework, because within the 5 core competences of social and emotional learning, you have social awareness, self-awareness, and responsible decision making. So from a conceptual perspective, they align very much with how GCE has been conceptualized across the literature. So I suppose bringing a little bit more of the focus back to home and looking at the core areas of work of the Ubuntu network, we focus in on 4 core areas: curriculum development, building educator professional learning, our research output that is contributing to and being knowledgeable of the research that is available in the space, and then our outreach work finally. So I suppose very quickly, just to take you through maybe some of the areas we work on and what we've been doing recently and the impact. You'll see our goal for Area 1 curriculum is to increase provision of high quality, evidence-informed GCE in post-primary ITE curricula. This is taken directly from our strategic plan, and you'll see 3 high-level objectives that are developed to inform that goal. So what have we been doing? So I suppose within our last year of existence, in terms of our scope of engagement, we've engaged with 13 higher education institutions involved in post-primary initial teacher education. This includes 9 institution-led projects and 2 major partnerships. Now, key to this curriculum development process is, and part of our model of curriculum, is our onward funding model. We offer onward funding for HEIs to devise projects or more longer term partnerships working across our 4 core areas. So with these 11 HEIs, we have engaged with professional Masters of Education programs, Bachelor of Education and specialist subject programs across many disciplines to integrate GCE, including English, geography, business, home economics, arts, etc. This spans more than 30 modules, including modules reflected both in the foundation disciplines in initial teacher education, as well as professional studies and school placement. We've reached more than 250 student teachers directly in the last year who have been engaged in project-based GCE learning. And we have had more than 109 attendees at one single flagship GCE conference at one of our HE partners, which is St. Angela's ATU. In terms of impact, these projects and partnerships produce materials, resources, and knowledge objects that we can share across our member institutions to support knowledge and understanding of GCE. And these include digital resources, teacher handbooks, shared learning days, art-based reflexive exhibitions, student teachers engaged with the Global Teacher Award, and then development of professional learning communities and GCE communities of practice. Here are some of the artifacts produced from some of our HEI partners. We have student artifacts from post-primary school students that were engaged with our UCC colleagues, and the images show how post-primary students engage with critical reflection and representation of migration. We also have one of our flagship projects, which is the National College of Art and Design Change Lab, where the gallery space is used as both a pedagogical and exhibition space for their Global Citizenship Education project annually. And finally, the last image I have to share is a beautiful output that's actually produced from our UL partnership project. And this is one of the events that they ran in the last academic year around exploring and facilitating teachers' engagement with, developing understanding of global citizenship education in how it appears in so many of the learning outcomes reflected in our teacher education programs here at the university. One of the new initiatives we've developed around our core area of curriculum in the last year is development of exemplars of practice. This is an approach that we have aligned to our artifacts of learning. So in the last year, teacher educators presented 7 artifacts of learning, which demonstrate student engagement with pedagogy and practice relative to GCE. The exemplars of practice then are a new addition to this, where we have invited teacher educators to create multimodal outputs that narrate and extend their pedagogical approach as a teacher educator. And we've redesigned these to include that philosophical and pedagogical context for greater transformative impact across our members. And you can see from this slide the GCE themes explored and social justice matters and issues span many very complex contested areas like social justice, critical media literacy, anti-racism, etc. The second core area we focus on is educator capacity and professional learning needs. And our high-level goal here is to enhance teacher educator capacity to facilitate and model GCE. In the last year, we've run 4 major Ubuntu events with 138 attendees. We've developed a community of practice for cultivating self-awareness in teacher education. And equally, we've supported 7 HEI member-hosted training sessions, engaging some 1,600 participants. So just to provide you with an overview of the kind of capacity building events we support, we hosted a research meet. We have our annual assembly day. And you'll see some of the key themes there that we explore relative to our core areas. We hosted a climate seminar, and then finally our annual flagship event, which is our dialogue day. The third core area we focus on is research, and the high level goal here is to ensure that, thanks Paul, that our GCE is research informed and that we contribute to research in the area. So just very briefly, these are just 3 of the research projects that I have currently responsibility for as research lead. There are many more. The first one is conceptualizations of global citizenship education and initial teacher education. This is a national project supported by a project advisory group that looks to conceptualizations of GCE at policy, department, university and practitioner level. The second project is cultivating self-awareness for critical global citizenship education, and this is based on an international community of practice. And the research question we chose to frame this work is, how do teacher educators experience professional learning aimed at fostering self-awareness in the context of critical GCE and social justice? The third project is conceptualizations of social justice in teacher education. And this is a huge ongoing systematic review of the literature, again, in collaboration with 3 other colleagues. And the purpose of this, I suppose, is to map and investigate international and national peer-reviewed literature in this space. We are always looking to advance the research agenda of the network and global citizenship education. And we use a number of different, I suppose, key performance indicators to achieve this. These include research collaborations. So at the moment, we collaborate with Deakin University in Australia, Worldwide Global Schools, and the DICE network. And those last 2 are 2 strategic partners working in the space in Ireland. We have our ongoing CAME study informed by the standards for initial teacher education. We have conducted 5 high impact case studies, 4, across our partners. These are longitudinal high impact case studies detailing the impact of Ubuntu supported projects at 4 universities. In the last year, we published 5 book chapters, 3 journal articles, and 10 conference presentations, again, working to support that dissemination piece. We work with international colleagues and collaborations, and then we also work to develop, I suppose, repositories of resources to support people with research in GCE. We also engage in key research and evaluation efforts each year in terms of pre and post surveys, focus groups, and end of year reports that collate knowledge development, impact, reach, and capacity. The final core area we work to is outreach. And this is about communication and dissemination. And the high level goal that shapes this work is to engage education stakeholders in critical dialogue, action, and advocacy for GCE. And following research on effective communication with our stakeholders across our Ubuntu team, led by our digital and media officer, Thea, we engaged in implementing those findings to improve our content dissemination engagement, which we saw as a key gap in our model. So key improvements have included website enhancements. So for example, we publish Ubuntu event resources in digital packets. We've curated artifacts of learning and exemplars of practice across our stakeholders. We've enhanced our email communications, launching an Ubuntu Communications dedicated comms email. We designed digital and social media campaigns using social media, ticketing platforms, and website campaigns. And we've also engaged in branding materials and digital booklets for all our flagship events annually. In terms of what this has meant from a performance and impact perspective, the website revamp and comms emails have led to nearly 60% of an increase in active users in the last year, and nearly 120% increase in new users. And this just gives you an overview of the way we have worked together to support that communication and dissemination work, which is key for the work we do. While academic research articles, book chapters, and monographs are so important, we're very cognizant of having an accessible communications mechanism where we can get the breadth and impact of our work out there to both our stakeholders, but also broader audiences. So what have been our key achievements in terms of impact? I suppose our institutional partnerships and MOUs with 2 HEIs is really important, as well as the overall view of 12 HEIs engaged in GCE. Our exemplar of practice artifacts of learning are also key. Student engagement, our numbers are also always increasing. We have increased focus on the breadth of professional learning opportunities that we're engaging our stakeholders in, and this has been largely informed by engagement with the literature, and advocacy, of course, is a key piece. We engage in joint work plans with key partners. We present our work to key advisory groups, including the Department of Education, Irish Aid, and the strategic partners. We engage with our stakeholders, and obviously we engage relative to Ava's work that came before me. We try and engage with policy influence as well. Just as I see Paul coming on, the last thing I'm going to allude to is while our knowledge generation and sharing has been very positive and we are continuously trying to enhance our practice, this does not mean we're not met with barriers. We have engaged with funding freezes through key supporters of our work. Measuring GCE is a very, very complex, contested area, and there is need to both develop capacity of those engaged in that space, to upskill, but also to generate research, high-level research that informs this space. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks very much, Joanne, for again a real tour de force in terms of the work of the Ubuntu network. I suppose is it next year's maybe 20 years of Ubuntu?
Yes.
So yeah, so that in itself would be interesting to mark and reflect on. So there's a real kind of trajectory evidence of some of those KPIs in terms of looking at the enhanced web engagement and uptake is really impressive, but not by accident. With the approach you've taken to communication. So well done.